MyMajesties.com. My Majesties, an Urban Passport member.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food? Like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
Oh, we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com. For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, authentic Caribbean cuisines.
Open up the door, tell your mama hungry.
Follow the Black College Sports Network on social media at MyBCSN1, the number 1, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MyBCSN1. Support the Black College Sports Network so we can continue to provide you coverage. Go to myjbn.com/support and be a part of the Black College Sports Network.
They can follow their dreams.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
This is Brian Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Wrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Wrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show. Follow the Black College Sports Network on social media at MyBCSN1, the number 1, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MyBCSN1.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids' apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
We are back. For the first time in 62 years, the Florida Memorial Lions will hit the gridiron, and their home games will be streamed by the Black College Sports Network at www.fmuathletics.com, www.mybcsn.net, and on the MyBCSN app, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
Your ad could be ran here. MyJBN.com/support. MyJBN.com/support for more information.
Pleasant good morning to everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Carlos Brown Show, right here exclusively on the Black College Sports Network. Yours truly here. Happy New Year 2022, a new year. Hopefully everything will be great as far as living, health, and even financial. For those who want to say, hey, you can always use financial stability. Amen to that. Charles Edmonds joins me as special guest co-host. Charles, good morning, sir. Happy belated birthday and Happy New Year to you.
All three. Yeah, thank you very much. And Happy New Year to you and your family, and Happy New Year to everyone. It's a new year, new beginning, and let's go.
Well, new beginning in Southwestern Athletic Conference basketball. The conference openers are scheduled Monday, January 3rd. We'll talk about that. But the guest menu, of course, Charles Edmonds joins me. And to talk Southwestern Athletic Conference basketball will be the Coles Brown Show's basketball analyst, Coach Van Pettaway. He'll join me and Charles at second hour, which will be 12 noon at Central Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then last but not least, following Coach Van Pettaway will be Brandon B.J. Jones, the Coles Brown Show's Black College football analyst, to wrap up the football season. Charles, it's been a couple of weeks since the show has been on, but, hey, Happy New Year once again. And we're going to kind of talk about some things that happened at the end of 2021. And that was the Celebration Bowl. South Carolina State defeats Jackson State 31-10. And Charles, we predicted Jackson State. I think everybody did, all the prognosticators, but South Carolina State came out and showed everybody that, hey, never count out the underdog.
Yeah, I mean, right now, the MEAC has the SWAC's number, whether it's the MEAC SWAC Challenge or it's the Celebration Bowl. The MEAC has it going when it comes to the MEAC SWAC matchups. If you go back to September, August, when North Carolina Central upset Alcorn, and that's an upset. I think we could say that. I think you could clearly say that based on the stats, based on the records, that South Carolina State upset Jackson State. I mean, I had Jackson. I thought their defense was going to be dominant like it has been all year, but their defense sprung a leak. Shedeur Sanders was pretty average. So, as a freshman quarterback, he was average. So, I mean, you add all that up, I think the bottom line is South Carolina State outplayed Jackson State in the game. And for Jackson State, I mean, I think Coach Sanders said it a few weeks, prior, even in the SWAC championship game. The offensive line needed some work. And I think that's something Jackson State's going to have to look at in the recruiting in the transfer portal, to try to get some more beef up front, because clearly I saw some of the game, and clearly up front, offensive line, defensive line, you see it was one-sided. And that's where games are won and lost. You just look at the college football playoffs yesterday. You see Alabama and Georgia, they were just dominant up front. And clearly that's where Jackson State has to improve. I think a lot of our teams could say the same thing.
Well, I guess, and I was more so surprised, defensively, offensive line for Jackson State. I know, speaking with Charles Bishop, a colleague, saying that they needed improvement there. But defensively, South Carolina State did enough to kind of keep that very aggressive defense, and they were able to go up top. It's no secret. Jackson State, because of that defensive line and the way their defense played all year, they played press coverage, a lot of man-on-man, and they come after you. And South Carolina State was able to take advantage up top, over the top, a couple of times to keep that defense at bay, and then they were able to mix in, a little bit of the running game, and that helps. Sometimes, as you stated, Charles, it's the attempts as much as how much yardage you get offensively running the football. And then I thought South Carolina State did a great job, Coach Pugh, in the game plan. They gave Shedeur Sanders different looks. A lot of times they showed blitz, they dropped back, 8 in coverage. Then South Carolina State took advantage of some turnovers. Shedeur Sanders was 16 of 35 for 175, but 2 interceptions. So I know some would say he looked like a freshman in that ball game. But, hey, he had an outstanding season, and you have to remind yourself that he's, still a freshman. But I thought South Carolina State defensively, and they were very physical, and they were able to get it done. So a 21-point victory, the largest victory in the Celebration Bowl's short history for a team to win by 21 points. And the MEAC, once again, defeats the Southwestern Athletic Conference. Weird, very weird, but you have to give credit to the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. They keep getting it done.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think there are a lot of little factors with that. And I think the one thing that we cannot forget, and I know people might think it's an excuse, but the MEAC teams, whether it's, A&T when it was in the MEAC, or even if you look at South Carolina State, the MEAC representative has time to prepare for the Celebration Bowl. They have several weeks to get ready. So if you look at Jackson State, you look at their last 3 games: Southern, Alcorn, SWAC championship game. That's a lot. That's a lot of wear and tear. Those are big rivalry games, big games. And I'm not providing any excuse, but you cannot dismiss that factor.
I hope so, Charles. I was just wondering. Some are watching and say that could be, sounds like an excuse, but go ahead, sir.
Yeah, it is. It's going to sound like an excuse, but I think it's a legitimate point. When you have time to prepare, when you're not playing, yes, you could get rusty, but you get healthy. And, trust me, that Southern game, Jackson State was down. They rallied back, against Alcorn. It was 10-10 at one point in the third quarter, a couple of big plays. And then you talked about it a few weeks ago with the SWAC championship game, a pick six, a special teams touchdown. That was a grind. So you have to look at it. And I'm not. Congratulations, South Carolina State. There's no doubt about it. They outplayed Jackson State pretty much from start to finish. But you also have to look at the factors that are in there as well. If Jackson State or if Alcorn, whatever teams in the conference had the same amount of time, I would think there may be some different results so far in the early part of the Celebration Bowl series. But hey, I'm giving South Carolina State a lot of credit. They played well. Jackson State did not. And so congratulations, South Carolina State. But I do think the downtime that South Carolina State had, the grind that Jackson State had, I think plays somewhat of a factor. And I think it wouldn't be right if you didn't at least put it out there to say that was a factor in the Celebration Bowl. Will it change? Probably not, because the MEAC probably won't have a MEAC championship game. That's probably not going to happen. So whoever represents the MEAC is going to have a lot of time to prepare. Meantime, if Jackson is in it, they're playing Alcorn in the championship game, whatever team, got 2 weeks to prepare for the championship. and then you got to get ready for celebration. So I just want to throw that out there because clearly, we've been in it, and I know we wore down at times when we were in it, and clearly I thought Jackson State, they did the best that they could, but South Carolina State I thought was a step quicker. You could just tell maybe the preparation time played a bigger factor than we all want to believe.
That's interesting because the way it's formatted in the Southwestern Athletic Conference, that is going to be the normal way of doing it. The MEAC is going to have more downtime, but I think you just have to prepare. And let's just be honest, my humble opinion, we give credit to South Carolina State game plan coach Pugh and that staff did an outstanding job. They were fired up. They heard all of the talk. They heard all the prognosticators. They heard this loudmouth saying that Jackson State was going to win. Charles Edmonds predicted Jackson State was going to win. They heard that, and they came out and said, look, hey, we're not going to buy into all that. We accept the underdog role, but guess what? We don't feel like we're the underdog. We're going to come out and take care of business. So, game planning and Jackson State to me was, you're talking 18, 21-year-old student athletes. They're very confident that they were going to come out and take care of business. And they didn't, Charles.
Yeah, I agree with you. And then here's another point, too. When we talk about HBCU football, when you talk about the amount of coverage SWAC teams get versus the amount of coverage that MEAC teams get. And I don't know many people on the MEAC side of the fence, but I guarantee you there's a lot of talk about the SWAC. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of talk about the MEAC. So I think there is a chip on some of the MEAC teams in terms of not getting the love of the coverage. You do it, Black College Sports Network, Sports Lab, they give the love to the MEAC. But clearly, let's be honest, a lot of the talk's about these SWAC teams. And so I think there's a lot of pride from the MEAC side in terms of getting that love and getting that coverage. And the opportunities, the SWAC MEAC Challenge, the Celebration Bowl, those are your two biggest SWAC MEAC games. Nationally televised, big time atmosphere. So those things I think play a factor in it as well, because the MEAC teams want to go out and prove and show that we are just as good as the SWAC. And I think the two times they can show it on a national stage is the MEAC SWAC Challenge and the Celebration Bowl. So I think that plays a factor in it as well.
Yeah, SWAC MEAC Challenge. They've been more successful in that, and that's the beginning of the year. And if you look at Grambling State, the only team in the Celebration Bowl and it was 10-9 against North Carolina Central. So only one victory. Bottom line is, got to do better. Got to do better. And even in head-to-head competition during the regular season. And by the way, have you participated? Have you seen the conversations about who is Black College national champions for 2021? I just sit back and observe. That was interesting, You want to comment on that?
Well, I get it. I get it, because if you want to be 1,000% brutally honest, your favorite phrase, brutally honest, if we're going to have the conversation of who's the best HBCU football team, you include, all the NAIAs and the others. I get that, and that's just like the SWAC MEAC. It's almost the same type of thing in terms of the coverage, and I don't know if we'll ever get there. I think that's a conversation we'll have forever and a day, because if you really want to truly declare an HBCU champion, then you're going to have to include the other schools. So yes, that's a point well taken. It's a point that will never go away. Will we get any solutions for that? Probably not. Tuskegee's been really good in football until this year. And you look at what they've done. They could compete, I think, with any team in the conference up until this year. They could probably have a say in it. But I don't think anything's going to change. I think that's just a conversation. That's a dream that we'll have. Like, what if we can include some of these other teams? Yeah, I think we can have that conversation and we can put it on paper, but will it turn into reality? Most likely not.
Usually the Celebration Bowl winner has been crowned Black College National Champions. So I'll continue to leave that up to you all for discussion with that. Coach Julie has completed his staff. We're going to talk about that as well. And I'm very familiar with the majority of that staff that's coming over from Prairie View, but they have Southern ties, coaching ties, played. And then and one guy in particular, DeMarcus Boo Boo Miller, defensive line coach, All-American at Southern University. My favorite defensive tackle, 5'10" listed, 285. Now he's a slim down, not 285, but he is on the staff. And then also Southern University in the early signing period, they inked about 9 players. They are heavily into the JUCO ranks, which I understand. Transfer portal. You can see Southern's in there a little bit. You can see they're hoping to get some signatures. But with that being said, Coach Dooley, and we'll give you the list and give you our thoughts about it. Coach Dooley hopes to sign 17 in February the 4th. That's still the majority of the signings that will come. And I think if you can get some early on in the early signing period, which we talked about 2 weeks ago, they're talking about now moving it back to January. So you got a month between February 4th and say January the 4th or January 1st, where you can have the early signing period. So Southern has at least completed their coaching staff, and they're going to have more signees, and we'll take a look at that. And then also an early 2022 football, Charles, season. You got to go through spring season. Grambling State is recruiting heavily. Alabama A&M, the transfer portal. Alcorn State, from what I've seen, hitting the JUCOs ranks very heavily. The early 2022, too early predictions in the East, Charles. Go ahead.
I'm going with Jackson State. Remember, I had FAMU last year. I'm going with Jackson State 1. I still think FAMU is gonna be there, and I'm going with Mississippi Valley number 3. I think Valley.
Wait a minute, Charles.
Yes, sir.
Calm down the emotion. I know they got like the number 1 JUCO quarterback. They played everybody tough after the game. You always say, "Wow, you were in the ball game." To 3rd place. Mark that down. January 1st.
Mark it down.
11:18 a.m. Central Standard Time.
Mark it down. I think Coach Dooley can now exhale a little bit. 30 days ago, there was some discussion of whether he would even be back based on the fact they just won 3 games. He's going to get more time. He deserves more time. I think Valley administration made the right call. You see what they've done in the early period. Yeah, it's early, but I feel like Valley took everybody's best shot, and they were probably 5 or 6 plays away from maybe pushing Jackson, pushing FAMU. I think they'll get over the hump, and I do think there'll be a team that they will be. I think they'll be the number 3 team in the conference. I look at Bethune. Coach Sims apparently is going to be back. I think there's a little bit of work there. Alabama A&M. Glass is gone. I think there's going to be a little work to be done there to see what's going to happen, in that regard. You got a new coach at Bama State, and Eddie Robinson Jr. You don't know how that's going to go. So just being familiar with what we're familiar with. We're familiar with Jackson. We're familiar with FAMU. And I think we're somewhat familiar with Mississippi Valley just based on the noise that they made this past season. So yes, this is way too early. But I do think Valley is going to be a solid 3. I'm not so certain that those other teams, Bethune, Alabama State, I'm just not quite there yet with what they've done. But I am impressed with what Coach Dancy has done at Valley. Look out, Mississippi. Look out, SWAC East. Mississippi Valley will be there, and they could very well ruin your day come 2022.
I'll safely say, and I'm gonna be conservative, believe it or not. I think they'll be improved. Am I ready to put them in the too early spot at number 3? I don't think so. But I will say that Mississippi Valley State will be improved. And as I've watched the last couple of weeks, Alabama A&M has hit the transfer portal very heavily. I mean, it kind of reminds me of somewhat of what Jackson State did. They've turned over a lot. And yeah, they lost Glass, but I know they signed 2 outstanding quarterbacks in the class previously. But again, their first time under center in the collegiate atmosphere. So Alabama A&M, we'll see. Still, they have to prove that they can defensively get it done. And now replacing Akil Glass. The West, no, it shouldn't even be no predictions right now. It's too early. I mean, you have so much turnover. Disappointing seasons, if I could say. Alcorn State, disappointing. Southern University, really disappointing. Grambling State ended on a high note. Looks like the future may be bright with Mr. Hugh Jackson. And then Prairie View. And by the way, hadn't named the coach. Will they, football coach, what we're talking about, will they appoint an interim coach? It's weird. You're in January now and no announcement. Maybe an interim coach from the outside looking in.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And also you can kind of tell that maybe people within that building, players included, may be satisfied with the process, because you haven't read or heard of a lot of players transferring out. Based on what, I mean, I'm on social media, I'm following it, you're following it. You're not hearing so-and-so has transferred from Prairie View to wherever, or has hit the transfer portal. So, you won the Western Division, you made it to the championship game. Maybe the players there feel pretty confident in the process to this point. But I do think you have to hire a coach at some point in the next 2-3 weeks, I would think. I would think Prairie View fans are a little anxious with that. But that being said, the way too early predictions, you still, I think, have to go with Prairie View right now for the moment. We'll see who the next coach is going to be. I do think Southern still has the pieces. Alcorn, obviously, no Felix Harper. Our defensive coordinator, Cedric Thornton, is no longer with the program. He's at Grambling. So, we've got some things, in the hopper as well in terms of trying to fill those positions. And for the first time in like 4 or 5 years, we're going to have a quarterback under center that did not play at Alcorn the previous year, that wasn't groomed the year before. So that's going to be something different at Alcorn that we're going to have to look at as well. Grambling with Hugh Jackson. We don't know what Doc Gamble has up his sleeve at UAPB. There's been some turnover there. But I would say right now that Prairie View, they're the defending champs. You got to stick with them. But I think that race for 2, could it be Grambling? Could it be Southern? Could it be Alcorn? I think it's a flip of a coin right now. Dewey's got to get his program there. Hugh Jackson's got to get his program there. And, Fred McNair's got to, remake that defense with a new leader. So I think 2's going to be interesting. But I think right now, way too early, but right now, I think you still have to stick with Prairie View right now. But barely, I would say that.
The way too early conversation prediction. Thanks, AB. Sent me a text message. Bubba McDowell is the interim coach at Prairie View. Yeah, I knew that, but they may just continue in that direction. As of now, it is. And I could see that as an interim. We've seen that before, right, with Coach Rollins, the interim. And then based on the regular season, determines if you get it permanently. And so I guess I thought maybe Prairie View was going to have an announcement by now. But by not having an announcement and still going with the interim football coach and Mr. McDowell, Coach McDowell, maybe that's the decision that they're going to continue to do. That's going to be the decision. But we'll see. Monday, we may get a press release that Prairie View and them has decided on the coach. But I'm sure it's the players from the outside looking in. They probably like Coach McDowell.
Exactly right, because you know, players, when they're ready to go, they're ready to go, and they're gonna put it out there. It's gonna be reported. So you hadn't heard a lot of that. So my guess is, and again, your favorite phrase, the outside looking in, it seems like the players are pretty satisfied with the way things are going. But look, Dooley picked some of that, picked some of that Prairie View staff off a little bit. So there's gonna be some work to do there in terms of, what's gonna happen at Prairie View. I mean, you still, to me, you go with the defending champs until otherwise the data shows you otherwise. And so I'm gonna go with Prairie View, but I tell you what, nipping on their heels, Dooley's got a pretty good program that inherited there. Is McDaniel going to be the quarterback? A couple of running backs not going to be there. So Dooley's got some work to do. He's got some veteran coaches, some Southern ties. So you feel like Dooley's going to get it turned around pretty quickly. But then Grambling coming off that Bayou Classic win, you've got Hugh Jackson. He's going to remake that thing. Will Bowden be the quarterback there? Who's going to be the quarterback at Alcorn? Texas Southern's got a freshman quarterback in Body. I've seen his workouts. He's posted that on social media. Looks like he's coming along. And again, you don't know what's going to happen with Doc Gamble at UAPB. Nobody talks about them. And then next thing you know, they're going to be surprising everybody in 2022. So the West is just what it is, the wild, wild West. And I don't see that changing anytime soon.
That's a great way to put it, the wild, wild West. The SWAC announced it. Updated COVID-19 operational protocols for men and women's basketball. And I tell you what, you got variants moving around, COVID, now the surge, you see it every day. The numbers have spiked tremendously. It's almost like starting back over in essence. So let me just read a little bit of what the release said. The Southwestern Athletic Conference has announced its updated policy regarding men's and women's basketball games that are unable to be played due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. If an institution has a minimum of 7 available student athletes and 1 countable coach, it must participate in the scheduled basketball contest. If an institution does not have the required number of participants, it may still, wait a minute. It's basically saying you can still participate. If 2 opponents are unable to compete due to COVID-19 issues, both teams shall be deemed to have forfeited and each team will be charged with a loss. Institutions at their discretion can work with each other in a conference office to reschedule the conference contest. So basically, if you're not going to be able to fill the certain amount of players, then you'll have to forfeit. But if both teams can't have it, then the participants, the players, student athletes, then you forfeit it. And so conference play starts January 3rd, which is Monday. But Charles, you can reschedule. Teams can work with each other to reschedule those games. But boy, you kind of hope that the protocols in place by each institution will help, because you can have both vaccinations and the booster, and you're still seeing breakthrough situations with people getting COVID.
Yep. And I'm just looking at the schedules for both men and women, just before we went on, and you have a number of teams that hadn't played almost 2 weeks due to late non-conference cancellations. So that's worrisome, I'm sure, for some of those coaches like Texas Southern, Bethune, FAMU, Jackson State. Our Lady Braves had the last 2 games canceled. Our men, I was in Minnesota pulling up in the parking garage 2.5 hours before tip-off the other day, and the parking attendant tells me the game has been canceled due to some cases from what he heard in our program. He said, you might want to check on it. And no sooner than I pulled up in the parking space, our coaches texted me and said the game was off. So, here we go. We're right back to where we were. And, the commissioner said it at football media day. He said, if there's a team that's got the cases in football, it'll be a forfeit. And now what they just came out with the guidance a couple of days ago, it looks like it's the same thing. Although it's a little bit more wiggle room. If both teams have players and coaches down, they'll have to work with each other in the conference office to get the games rescheduled. Now, our game with Minnesota was canceled a few days ago. Jackson State had a late non-conference game the other day. That was canceled. We're scheduled to play each other on Monday. We'll see. I have not received anything that said the game is off. So as of 11:30 on this Saturday, the game is still on. But like I said, I've had games canceled in the conference 3 hours before tip-off, 6 hours before tip-off. So it's just way too early to tell. But the conference is trying to protect themselves and trying to give teams some options to get these games played. Because I think everybody wants to see the games played, but you're trying to be safe. We all know what to do now, the social distance. I mean, clearly the experts have said this was probably going to happen. The holidays, a lot of travel. Look, I've been traveling across the region on these planes. These planes are packed. The airports are packed. People are traveling. I can tell you that right now. I mean, people don't care about, these other type of things. They're wearing their masks or doing whatever, but people are doing what they want to do. They want to travel. They want to fly. They're doing it. Because I've been on these planes and I'm getting tested and I'm okay for right now. So, but we're going to have to continue to do that if we're going to have these games played. Alcorn had 6 games last year. Our men had 6 games canceled due to COVID issues, 12 overall. And, you're kind of seeing where this is going. So I think the conference is doing a good job in putting the stop sign up and say, hold up. If you want to play these conference games, which start Monday, this is what has to happen if the cases are there. And it looks like that's going to happen.
Well, continue to follow safety rules and regulations as far as COVID and, hey, still mask up. That's the most important thing. And so you can kind of, get into these games. The conference is about to start. So the conference has put it out there, what the protocol to follow, what's going to happen. So hopefully everything will be as such that you can get through this basketball conference. And by the way, I'm using ranting and raving about the preseason skit records and stuff. And I look, and we're going to get more into it with Coach Pettaway and Charles Edmonds. But Southern University, 6-7, non-conference record. That's a whole lot better than 1-12, 2-11, 3-10. Although you look and you see that quite a few of our teams they have those type of records. But I know, Charles, you're going to say, in a way, it doesn't matter. When the conference starts, that's what they're going to be judged on. But I will say this. I can't say anything. I can't rant and rave about Southern and a bad non-conference record. You had some quality wins. Kent State, Tulane, Tennessee State. Hey, I'm happy. Would I be even more happier if it was 13-0? Well, we know that wasn't going to happen. But 6 wins compared to 1 or 2 or 3. Hey, Southern University, best non-conference record.
Well, I think right now people are ready for SWAC, but what we deal with in this 6-week period between mid-November and the end of December is that come March, when March Madness starts and you look at TV and you see where your SWAC team is going to be either in Dayton or a 16 seed and you're fussing about it, you're cussing about it, you can't, because that was determined already. Now our commissioner's on the committee, on the NCAA committee, from my understanding. And so he might be able to lobby and legislate, but you have to win throughout the league. You have to do kind of what Southern did. If every team in the conference did what Southern did, that 6-7 or something like that, a couple of big wins, I think you could push for maybe a 14 or 13 or 12 seed. But there's no doubt. I mean, I got it right here. You got 2 teams that are winless. You got 3 teams with 1 win, 5 teams with 2 wins, 3 teams with 1 win, and Southern at 6 and 7. So and albeit, and I have to say it's tough because you got teams that only play 2 home games. A couple of teams had 2, a couple of teams maybe with 3 or 4 home games, and that's tough. But we all know why that's the case. The ADs are saying you got to bring in a certain amount of money through guarantees. But like Coach Sanders said, I'll go back to football. He's not big on playing these FBS games. I get it. But if Jackson if they continue to do what they've been doing, their last 3 home games, they drew over 50,000. Just think how much money they brought in the last 3 home games, including the SWAC championship game. They feel like they don't have to play the ULMs of the world, or they don't have to do that. Same for basketball. If we do that, then we won't have to go all over the country and get these guaranteed games. But that's not the case. That's not where we are right now. So therefore, you have some teams that haven't played a home game at all, like Alcorn. A couple of teams like that. And so as long as that takes place, then we're going to continue to be where we are in terms of either being a play-in opponent. I've been a part of that. I've been a part of a 16 seed and a 15 seed. It's tough. Now, we did have a 16 seed beat a 1 seed. That can happen. It has happened, but it's only happened once in the history of the tournament. So, right now, we're excited about the SWAC. I am. I'm anxious to see with Landon Bussey in year 2, anxious to see how they're going to do against Jackson State. I'm anxious to see how the conference is going to turn out. But come March, when we look at these brackets, we're going to be complaining. And I'm going to reference back to January 1 in this show, like, hey, we got to do better in non-conference.
Well, and thus they have the ultimate struggle, decision. Do you try to help out the conference as a whole and play games that you have a better chance of winning as far as RPI and get the conference higher and higher ratings? Or do you don't worry about that and say the number one objective is we've got to bring in X amount of dollars? That's the choice that's before them. And some institutions, most, they take the latter. They've got to bring in a certain amount of money. We've talked about this till we're blue in the face about what needs to be done, what they should do. So it's no secret. But as long as you have director of athletics that insists that Alcorn, Southern, University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, you bring in X amount of dollars, play-in is basically where you're going to be at. In every blue moon, you may get a 15 seed or 14 seed, 12 seed, 13 seed. Not on a consistent basis. That should be the goal. But then as a conference, everybody has to cut back on those money games and start playing those teams that are ranked maybe 75 to 125, specifically 75 to 100 or 75 to 150, and start having success. Kent State, Tulane, and then, Tennessee State, that's a comparable game. Those are Southern's, of victories. So hopefully, as a conference, and under the leadership of the commissioner, they'll continue to evaluate and make a decision, not try to do both, but do one or the other. And then you can throw in, 2 or 3. We talked about it before, of those guarantee games. But I wouldn't hold my breath on it.
Yeah, I also say, we talk about the ADs and their decision. I think a lot of it is on the ADs, but the ADs have a boss too. And their bosses are the VP of finance, they're the ones that are looking at the dollars and cents and what makes sense. So I think that's the other part of it too. I think the ADs, just my opinion, they want to help their coaches out because they look good as an athletic director. No one wants to see their basketball team 0-13 going into conference. But when your VP of finance is telling you, look, this is what basketball spends, how are we going to make this money up? And, Texas Southern's a program, for example, that's pretty much self-sufficient when it comes to those guaranteed games. That's why they're playing the Gonzagas of the world and the UCLAs of the world. They're bringing in tons of money. You know Johnny Jones and that staff's making pretty good coin. So that has to be paid for somehow. So you get that part of it. But I think Granger, the AD, he's played basketball at Texas Southern. He knows. I think he wants his teams to look good. And they played well during the regular season, the tournament, and even the first round, the NCAA and the play in the tournament. But also it has to be paid for as well. So I think there's a balance there. The ADs want their coaches to be successful, but then when the VP of Finance is looking at the dollars and cents and saying, look, you got to bring in $600,000, you got to do that by playing the Gonzagas and the Michigan States and the Dukes of the world. Yeah, you can sprinkle in the Tulanes, you can sprinkle in the quality mid-major games, but you're probably going to get those where you're not going to get a guarantee. You may get a lesser of or a home and home, which that's not what you're really looking for. You're looking to get a check. We got a check for playing Minnesota. That's a pretty good check. We got a check for playing Gonzaga. We got a check for playing Houston, pretty big, probably six figures for those games, close to $90,000, $100,000 guarantees for those type of games. Houston, Gonzaga, Baylor, those schools can afford to give you that. So I think that's the other thing. I think the VPs of finance have probably as much of a say in that formula as much as the ADs do.
Well, I'll ask the question again. If that money, well, first of all, AD, who's listening, appreciate it, colleague here on the Black College Sports Network, he says, number one objective should be to win the conference, then make money, then help conference rating. We should be playing more mid-majors. And I agree with that part, more mid-majors. Now, the money, those guarantees that you mentioned with Alcorn State, if 80% of that money is put back into basketball, that'd be one thing. But somehow I suspect that it goes in the general fund. And then after that, it's, it doesn't, that 80% of that guarantees doesn't make it to the basketball program. I'm sure it goes into the general fund and it's used accordingly to needs. But I would like to see, if you're going to play those games, and I'm still not in favor of playing 8 or 9 of them, 10 of them, or you on the road for the whole non-conference. My goodness, that sucks. But earmark whatever percentage for that program. Is that unfair to suggest earmark majority of that for that basketball program? Because the basketball program is out on all these road games, getting those guarantee games. It should be reinvested back into the basketball program, Charles. Just my humble opinion.
Yeah, every school is different. I could say at Alcorn, for athletics, the amount of money that's supported for athletics is coming from the general fund, which also pays the teachers, the deans. So that's academic money paying for athletics. So if you take money from that pot to put in athletics, it has to be made up somehow, some way. And so that's where the football games come in and these guarantee games. In other words, athletics has their money up front. Now they've got to find a way to replenish what was given to them. I think that's kind of what a lot of schools are doing. A lot of schools have been doing it that way. And Texas Southern, because they're bringing in so much and they're making pretty good coin, I think they can probably shave a lot of it off and use it for their needs with the basketball program. But my guess is the way Alcorn is doing it is the way that a lot of schools are doing it. They may not be talking about it like we're talking about it, but the money has to come from somewhere for salaries, for scholarships. That also has to be paid for as well. So, the scholarships are what they are. You can waive the scholarship to the student athlete, as it's been explained to me, but you can't waive it. You can waive it for the student athlete, but you can't waive it to the university. They still have to collect on that scholarship. LSU pays $6 million in football scholarships from their foundation to get their kids in school. We don't talk about it that much here, but that's just that's a much bigger picture. But it's the same concept. That has to be paid for somehow. So when the money spent here, it has to be made back on the other end. So I understand that point of it, Carlos, but when you're using academic money to pay for athletics, it has to come back. Now, if you have athletic money to pay for athletics, it may come back, it may not. So I think that's kind of the difference there.
Well, Dwight is weighing in, saying athletic departments have to make money to support all of its programs. They can schedule games that are best to develop their program by identifying other ways to generate multiple $1 million outside of games. That's part of the makeup that needs to be part of today's ADs. So an AD, basically, if like Alcorn's looking for one, right? They haven't hired an AD. Wouldn't it be to Alcorn's advantage and all ADs that when you hire an AD that they have a business and marketing background, and then under that have a good staff who can basically handle the day-by-day operation, chief operating officer, and then that AD along with the president. I mean, we should talk about this. Mr. Humphreys at FAMU, all of them, those two, they don't see the campus that much because they're out soliciting, trying to raise funds both for academics and athletics. They go hand in hand. Just my personal opinion. I understand what you said. I understand what the listeners are saying. But back to basketball, my goodness, that's just a lot. That's a lot of pressure to have them to go out on the road and play all of those money games. I would just like to curve them. Instead of playing 10 or 12 of them, how about 4? But
yeah,
I guess there will be. I guess those on the other side will say, well, that's going to cut into the athletic budget if they're not allowed to go out and make those extra money. Thus, then you got to come up with creative ways to make that up. I mean, because I've stated before, if I'm just take it off that I host the Carlos Brown show. If I'm just a fan or alumni supporter, I'm just not excited. If I'm coming, it's the conference opener against Texas Southern. And by the way, we still got COVID and all that going on. But even before this, it was pre-COVID. I'm not excited about a team that's 2-12. And I mean, and they're getting blown out by 20, 30, 40 points. Charles, I listened to, what was it, Bell and Alcorn? A little bit. I mean, I understand that you're playing up, although they're Division I in basketball, but that's just tough. But I also know that you got to win the conference. And so you got to have amnesia in a way to forget about those non-conference games. But boy, it's tough.
And it is tough. It absolutely is tough. And I think
this is reality.
It is reality. And I think also when it comes to coaches, my guess again, I'm not an AD, I don't know this, but I'm guessing if I'm an AD in this conference and I'm judging my basketball coach in his performance, it's going to start in January. Because I understand and I'm putting him in a very tough situation to have him go out and play all these games and the record being what it is in non-conference. But they turn around and go 15-3 in the SWAC and win the regular season and win the tournament. You go to the NCAA tournament, then it's all good again. I mean, because I think our fans don't pick up SWAC basketball until SWAC season starts, which is Monday. There's talk on social media about, what we did or didn't do. Nice wins by Texas Southern, nice wins by Southern. We beat Milwaukee, that got some play. So that generates a little bit of a buzz for the moment. But the real action, and I hate to say it, but this is just reality. If we're going to have a conversation, let's have it. The real action starts Monday night. And that's when coaches are earning money, starting Monday night. If you go 3-15 in the conference, it's going to be tough. That even though you did what you were told to do and bring in $700,000 in guaranteed money from November through December, you go 3-15 in the conference, you're behind the 8 ball. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. That's about the best way I can come up with. It's unfortunate. But I think our fans understand it, and they're going to rally and support whatever team wins the SWAC tournament and go to the NCAA tournament, and we go from there. But I do think, playing the mid-major teams is great. Playing the Stephen F's, the Tulanes, the Southeastern Louisianas of the world. They're great. Excellent. You got Tennessee State and others. But again, how much money you're getting from those type of games. Tulane will give you a decent guarantee, but Tulane's not going to give you what Baylor's going to give you. If Baylor's going to pay you $100,000 and pay for travel, you're going to take that because there's no money coming out of your budget for that. Tulane, they'll give you a smaller guarantee, but you got to pay more into it in your transportation costs and other costs. So that's the other decision you have to make. And Tulane's just 3 hours from Alcorn's campus, so you can absorb that because it's just a short trip. So these are decisions that are being looked at. I can guarantee you that. But when your boss, your AD says, this is the figure, 650,000. I don't care who you play. You can play Duke, North Carolina, Gonzaga, Baylor, Houston. You play those 5 games, that's close to $650,000 in guarantee. You can play those 5 teams and cover your whole, cover the goal that you've been given. But do coaches want to do that? No. I think they'll play 2 or 3, but then they'll play the Eastern Kentuckys, the Western Kentuckys of the world, and try to get a couple of home games, a home and home if you can, because I think that's important too. You want to play at home. You also want to taste victory. We played down. And that's been successful because coaches want to just at least have their team taste the victory. Let's see what a victory feels like. And then you can springboard from there. So I've seen all kinds of different ways, Carlos, and I don't know if it's going to change, especially when we're all kind of thinking differently. And until we get together as a conference and say, look, we got to play just a handful of these games to help our RPI and to avoid the play-in, I don't see it changing. I just don't. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I love this conference. I want to see it at the best that it could be. But in basketball, I don't see that changing, especially with the amount of money these teams are paying for guarantees these days.
Well, let's look at it this way. We've had the discussion about football and on social media, privately. What was the question? Don't you want to be better than just SWAC wins? You remember that discussion as far as football, and then that leads into playing against, FCS. Some of our alumni and followers, they see no value in playing the Southeastern or those schools. But I'll ask the question: don't you want to win outside of the conference and consistently win? And to do that, then maybe you're gonna have to compromise again. Meet halfway. Not saying get rid of all of those guarantee games, but let's cut them back some. Because again, and Coach Pettaway is coming up in a few minutes. I'll ask him. He's talked about it. You got to be on the same level, both academically and athletics. ADs, you mentioned about, they have bosses. So why not sit down and say, look, at each institution, let's put some balance to this. Let's compromise and not play 12, 13 games on the road. What does that do for the student athletes? And then again, I ask a question. Don't you want to win consistently outside the conference? That's not going to really happen. Every now and then you're going to beat a Power 5 school. But mid-majors, you can have some success. I remember when Coach Banks was the basketball coach at Southern University, and it was an article, up-and-coming mid-majors. They mentioned Southern University. Now, of course, you got Coach Woods, and by the way, I'm going to have him on next Saturday to talk about the Southern University men's basketball program. But we meaning supporters of the conference, we got to get that conference rating up. We got to. And you know what has to be done. It's just a matter of doing it. Now, will ADs and vice presidents, chancellors, presidents, will they be willing to give up some of those guarantee games? Probably not as of this moment. But is that something you got to consider? And do you want to win outside the conference? Or is it just winning conference games? That's most important to get to the big dance. I think you can do both.
Yeah, you can. There's no doubt that you can. It's like, what are you willing to give up to get what you want? Because clearly, to have it all, that means you have to give up a whole lot to get all of that. So just in the sense of basketball, all right, so you got 3 or 4, some teams 5 assistant coaches that have to be paid for, right? You always talk about the assistant coaches, Carlos, right? You always want to take care of your assistant coaches. Texas Southern probably, and I'm using them because they have a pretty deep bench. Those spots have to be paid for, and they're well paid. So how are you going to pay for that? Well, if you go out and play the Gonzagas and the Michigan States, that's going to help you pay for that. You know, Johnny Jones makes a pretty good coin. You got to pay for that. And I think Texas Southern is just a different example. But if you look at other schools in the conference, yeah, if you want to bring in less, that's fine. But that means that you're probably going to have to do with less. That means maybe one less coach. That may be a couple of less scholarships. But yet, you still have to win. So where's that balance? Is that balance or that out of balance? So in order to get something, you got to give up something. So what are you willing to give up to get what you want? Because it don't always equate. So I think that's the other thing too. I mean,
give up about 4 or 5 of those guarantee games.
Okay, so that's about $400,000 that you're willing to give up. So if you're looking at elevating your program with a deep bench with a bunch of assistants, video assistant and others, if you want to give that up, that's fine. If you want to give up that $400,000, but that means that you might have to give up a coach. That means you might have to give up some other stuff. I mean, it's just, I think that's kind of where that is when it comes to basketball, because we're not packing our arenas in conference, Carlos. First of all, we don't have but about 9 games to begin with. Some schools don't have any home games until conference. We're not getting the non-conference games at home. That helps a little bit, but even the non-conference games, we're not drawing that well. I mean, I hate to say this, it's painful because I love this conference, but it's just reality. You know, we'll pack the rival games. Prairie View, Texas Southern is going to be packed. Alcorn Jackson's going to probably be packed. AMU Bethune's going to be packed. But outside of that, you know, where do you make your money at home? That helps as well. And I think that's why Coach Sanders, going back to football, is saying we don't need to play ULM. We just had 3 games over 50,000 at Veterans Memorial Stadium. How much money did they just make off those 3 home games alone? If you continue to do that, I get his point. So let's carry that to basketball. So if we do the same thing in basketball that Jackson State did in football, then you're right. You don't have to play the Gonzagas of the world. You can play the Middle Tennessee States of the world and get a home and home. But that's not happening right now. It hasn't happened. And do I hope? Am I hopeful? Yeah. But am I a realist? Yeah. Is it going to happen? No. So I think that's the juggling act. That's the balance that you have to look at when you're an AD, you're a VP of finance, because there's a cost associated with a basketball program. And it's a pretty good cost as well.
Well, I know one thing. We've tried what we're doing now, and it just hasn't worked for what, 10 years? And attendance, I think, will be correlated with how many wins. If you win some of those mid-major games that you play, I think it'll be more enthusiasm for fans, because ultimately that's attendance will help. But you're not going to have a big crowd out. Southern hosts Texas Southern Monday, and then Prairie View. 2 teams that have done well, right? Rich history in basketball. And we're going to look at the rankings, the preseason rankings. Now, Southern should have one of their better crowds because, well, they haven't been at home that much. But I think you'll get more fans because they're 6 and 7 and not 1 and 12. So there's a correlation between wins and attendance. And once again, and we'll end it on this part, but we'll pick it back up with Coach Pettaway. I just my humble opinion. You got to balance this situation, and if you're going to play that many games, there's no incentives for a fan to come out except for conference, which the attendance hasn't been good over the years per se throughout the conference with the conference games. But you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball when you play that many guarantee games. Let's have some balance with the situation. Let's tighten up the budgets. Can you believe that? That sounds like a conservative. Cut where we need to, tighten the belt up, and let's go out and schedule more of those mid-major games and then have some success. And then we'll come back and see if attendance ticks up somewhat, it drops, stays the same. How about that, Charles?
I mean, that sounds great. That sounds great. But if I'm a basketball coach and I'm making a pretty good coin for being a basketball coach, then there's pressure on me to perform as a basketball coach to continue to make that big money to support my family. So all I want is give me the tools. I'm not going to ask for a Kentucky-type staff with 13 coaches, but if I need 4, can I get 4? And I think 4, and I can justify every one of those coaches and their duties. They're going to earn their keep every day, every month. Director of basketball operations and all that other stuff. Just give me an opportunity to do what I can do. And if I don't make it, if I don't survive, coaches get hired to get fired. That's just the nature of the business. But give me the tools to work with. And if I don't make it, then hey, that's just the nature of the business. And I think that's where coaches have to kind of push a little bit, but they know there's only so much that they're going to get. But what are the expectations? The expectations start in conference. Number one, you're expected to bring in X amount of dollars from November to January. And then in conference, you're expected to, whatever that is, top 4, top 6, whatever it is, win the whole thing. For Texas Southern, it's all about winning the whole thing. Anything else will not do at Texas Southern. Ask Kevin Granger, ask Mike Davis, ask Johnny Jones. It's all about winning the whole shebang at Texas Southern. Other schools as well, but when you look at TSU and what they've got, the amount of money that he's making, the amount of money their coaches are making, it's big time over there. And so they expect to play big time and win big time, especially in conference. And if they can pick off a couple of mid-majors, I think that'll get, the TSU Tiger Nation excited as well.
And outside the conference, that should be the goal. Winning conference is a no-brainer. You got to win there. We'll take our first time out of today's show, the first of 2022. Happy New Year. When I come back, we'll add Coach Van Pettaway. He's the Coles Brown Show's basketball analyst. We'll look at Monday's games and Wednesday's games. We'll talk about what we've just talked about, get his perspective on should swag basketball be based just on winning the conference. That's a no-brainer. But should we expect more? And how do we do that? You're watching the Coles Brown Show on the Black College Sports Network. We shall return.
Follow the Black College Sports Network on social media at MyBCSN1, the number 1, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MyBCSN1. Support the Black College Sports Network so we can continue to provide you coverage. Go to myjbn.com/support and be a part of the Black College Sports Network.
The Pettaway Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
This is Ryan Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Wrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Wrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show. Follow the Black College Sports Network on social media at MyBCSN1, the number 1, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MyBCSN1.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
We are back. For the first time in 62 years, the Florida Memorial Lions will hit the gridiron, and their home games will be streamed by the Black College Sports Network at www.fmuathletics.com, www.mybcsn.net, and on the MyBCSN app, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Coles Brown Show, right here on the Black College Sports Network. I'm Coles Brown, joined by Charles Edmonds of the Alcorn State Radio Network, and now Coach Van Pettaway for another year. And it was a tough negotiation, but Coach Pettaway, the Coles Brown Show's basketball analyst. Coach, good morning to you and Happy New Year.
Good morning, Carlos. Happy New Year to you guys. I'm excited and looking forward to the start of the season.
Yeah, well, as Charles Edmonds said, the conference season is about to start, and we'll get your thoughts on some of the games coming up Monday and Wednesday. But Coach, you know, new travel partners like Southern and now Grambling State, Alcorn and Jackson State. Some things are just a little bit different. And then, of course, you're adding FAMU and Bethune-Cookman now as far as their first season in playing basketball in the conference. So we're going to talk about that, but let's just go right to what we talked about the whole hour. And I hope the fans are saying, oh, no more of that. But we were talking about just looking at the records as far as men's and women before the conference play starts. Pine Bluff on the women's side, 4-6. That's the best record. On the men's side, Southern University, 6-7. Non-conference. How important is it to establish winning some of those non-conference games? And do we, as a conference, the institutions, do we put too much emphasis on the guarantee games?
Yes, I think a lot of the institutions put too much into the guarantee games. They try to make basketball the breadwinner, and I think that's wrong on a lot of levels, because the biggest thing is I think you're not being fair to your student athletes. See, those young ladies and young men need to compete against programs that are their own size, because on the mental side of it, you got to win. If you go through your entire, you got very few teams that can rebound from having no wins during the non-conference schedule and then turn around and win during the conference schedule. There, you know, when you look back on the records, there are some teams that are veteran teams that can pull that off. But if you got a young team or you got a new team and you're not used to that, continuity is not there because those kids have not experienced winning, then I think you're going to have a problem. And so to me, it was always, when I put the schedule together, I tried to make sure that we had a couple of home games in there, or if I played a game on the road, it was against a team that was similar to us, where we had a chance of winning at their place. But when you go to some of these places for these guarantee games, you guarantee to just walk out of there with the check and that's it. And a lot of times you get your kids demoralized. You got to have something positive for those kids to look forward to or to experience in order for them to have a good season. I'm a firm believer in that.
When you were at Alabama A&M, how important was it to sit down with the director of athletics and then his boss, which I guess would be the president? How involved were they with putting the schedule together? I know, you know, the budget and all of that, but how involved were they as far as putting the schedule? And did they demand that you bring in X amount of dollars?
Right. They gave me a sum. They gave us a dollar amount that I agreed to, that I could deal with, because back during that time, it wasn't a very big amount. You know, when they only ask you to bring in 150 to 200,000, you can get that in a couple of games. But I had it in my contract that I controlled my schedule. So our athletic director, he could make suggestions, but I had the final say so on it. And I had some good ADs. They did not overstep. They allowed me to schedule the way I needed to schedule. So the only time that I really went above board is when we decided to redo Elmore, put the new seats in. I think we played over like 8 or 9 guarantee games that year because that president allowed us to use the money for that specific purpose. So he told me not to worry about my record as long as I was bringing money in like that to help the university. And when we redid the Elmore, all that money that we got that year, it went toward that project. So when you have a president or an administration and you're on the same page, then you can get things done. But unfortunately for that president, he didn't last but another year after that. But we did get the work done, which was needed a long time ago. So I think there has to be a collaboration between the administration and the basketball staff, or all athletic staff, in order to use some of that money to enhance your program. I'm not saying take it all, but you got to have some going back in the program to help maintain the program or either move it to the next level.
Sounds like general fund, if not, but reinvest back into that program.
Right.
Charles, I'm sure you're chomping at the bit to ask Coach Pettaway a question.
No, I mean, what he's saying is kind of what we talked about last hour, but it's just maybe a different way. Okay, so for the money that they got for the guarantees went to improve the Elmore gym. But for other programs, it could be to bolster their staff. Like, you know, yeah, like I said, there's some SWAC programs that have 5 or 6 assistant coaches. Some SWAC programs have, you know, renovated offices that they're improving. That money's got to come from somewhere. So I think it's just different. We're saying the same thing, I think, but it's just different way of spending the money. So I think what Coach Pettaway said is right on point. You want to invest in the program, but then at the same time, if there's no pressure for him to win, like he talked about, then you're just getting a bunch of checks to pay for that project. So that's the other part of it too. And I think back during those times, the pressure might not have been as great, but these coaches are making a lot more money now than they were when Coach Pettaway was coaching.
Yep.
A lot more. I mean, $150,000, you know, in guarantee money. That's a Baylor and a Middle Tennessee State. I mean, you I think every coach in the league would love that if that's all they had to bring in. That's 1.5. That's a mid-major and a major, and that's it. That's all you got to bring in. Right. That's not the case now. Salaries have gone up. You have more assistant coaches on the sideline. Their salaries have to be paid for. So I get what Coach Pettaway is saying, but I think it's a different time because coaches are under pressure to win, like we talked about in the last hour. Give me just some of the tools I need to win. And if I don't, then hey, I'll move on, or the university is going to move on from me. But give me the basic tools. I need 4 assistant coaches. I think 4 is a basic borderline number. I think some schools don't even have that in this league, 4. Some might have only 3. Some might only have 2. But just give me some basic tools. And if I don't win, hey, so be it. But I just need something to help me do the best that I can to win. And I think that's kind of where this battle comes in a little bit between the coach and administration, because you do want to win. Because if you don't win, you're not going to be around. That's just the way it works.
Right. And Charles, to piggyback on that, if my salary was tied into me playing guarantee games, I'd be playing a bunch of guarantee games every year.
But see, it's not.
And you know what? I'm serious. And the MEAC started that years ago. Years ago in the MEAC, that's the reason why those coaches' salaries were so high, because the administrations in the MEAC, they were putting that incentive in their contract. You can get more. Your payment will be more if you're bringing in more money. So they use guaranteed money to help subsidize salaries. We've never done that. Okay, during my tenure at Alabama A&M, I never had a full staff. I never had all my scholarships, but I was still expected to win. I was still expected to go out and play guarantee games. And that minimum of $150,000, that's where I started. Now, when I left A&M, they moved it up. It was up over $300,000 that I had to bring in. So Charles is right. At $150,000, I made that with ease. It was easy to make that. That's why I always played 2 or 3 home games, because I didn't have to spend all that time on the road for guarantee games. Because what they asked for at the time was a minimal amount, and I was able to get that with a couple of games. But as they raised the amount of money that we had to bring in, now you got to play more games. You got to play bigger games. That takes you away from those mid-major games. Now you got to play more Power 5 teams to get that. And then back then, we as coaches in the SWAC, we knew what conferences not to mess with. Like Conference USA, that was one of the lowest paying conferences out there. So you wouldn't pick them first. That would come in on the tail end. But if you go to the Big Ten, if you go to the ACC, SEC, you knew you were going to get a pretty good payday. But some of the other conferences, Conference USA office had to get involved to help their RPI to get more home games. They started putting money out there so that their institutions could pay more bigger game guarantees. So it was a lot involved in putting together a schedule. a lot of behind the scenes stuff. And you know, my president and I, we had to understand that I didn't have to worry about my record. But see, the alumni didn't know that. They didn't know that.
Well,
they still expected me to win.
And you know, Coach Pettaway, as I listen, I said earlier, and I think you agree with this. You got to give up something to get something. But as a conference, again, you playing those minute guarantee games. Well, the coach should have another hashtag on side of his name. Basketball coach / AD.
Right. Fundraiser.
Fundraiser. Why? It shouldn't all be on the basketball coach. You know, if you're going to have 4 or 5, I said 4 or 5. Now I'm thinking about maybe 3 guarantee games. But this won't get paid for. That won't get paid for. So you what's going to be your decision? Do you want to balance it out, or you're just going to say, hey, the record coming in the conference is not going to be good, but I'm going to be judged on winning conference games. But when does it go to the point, don't you want to be just better than just winning conference games?
Right. You always do it. Every coach starts out the season, they want to win those non-conference games too, but a lot of times we're put behind the 8 ball because we're playing at places where they're not going to give you that check and let you win the game. That's not going to happen. When you look at it, our non-conference schedules, you have, you know, both on the men and women's side, you got all these lopsided losses because they don't care. You showed up on their schedule, they're going to put it to you. And that's why coaches have to be real, have to make sure that they're scheduling the right people so that you do not get into your kids' heads, because once you get that losing in their head, it's hard to get it out of it. And we're going to see that. You'll see that. Like this year, for the first time on the men's side, I don't know the last time Prairie View didn't win a non-conference game. So see, for them to start their season out with no wins, unless he's got a bunch of veterans on that team, it's going to be rough for them to pull it out. And look at this. They're starting on the road this year. You know, they got the Louisiana swing.
That never changes. That's another thing I'll talk about in future shows. Wow.
Yeah.
and you gotta add COVID to it now. I mean, just
right.
what we talked about in the last hour, you got 3 or 4 teams that hadn't played in almost 2 weeks because of cancellations, COVID cases, whether within their program or the other team's program. You know, you got Texas Southern had the last 2 games canceled. Bethune has had their last game canceled. FAMU's had the last 2 games canceled. Jackson State's had the last 2 games canceled. Our last game with Minnesota was canceled. It was on our end, but still, you want to play at least a few days before conference to keep the continuity. You don't want to go 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks without playing. So I'm kind of concerned in terms of what type of play we're going to see at conference for the first couple of weeks of the season, because teams are rusty. Teams are out of rhythm, out of sync, because they're used to playing every 3 or 4 days. Some hadn't played for 14 days. I think that's something you got to keep. I'm sure Coach Pettaway knows this. You got to keep the continuity going. And with COVID and continuity don't add up. And I think that's what we're looking at right now.
Yeah, the 2 seeds are going against each other.
Yeah.
Well, and guys, Pine Bluff, 4-6. They got an outstanding player on the women's side. That's a young lady that normally will go to one of those top tier Division I schools. You look at FAMU. I'm just kind of looking at the overall on the women's side, 0-11. They're on 11-game losing streak. Southern 2-9. But when we look, if we go back and see how they picked the basketball predicted order of finish, Jackson State 1, Alabama State 2, Southern 3, Alabama A&M 4. And you look at the non-conference record, Jackson State 2-6, Alabama State 2-8. You get the drift. So they're coming in, add COVID in. Now they've got to hit the ground running in conference play. And Coach Pettaway and Charles, remember last year, Alabama State, because of COVID, they didn't play a non-conference schedule.
Yeah, right.
And the women came out and did very well. Coach Pettaway and Charles, how do you see with all of these other X factors, and we kind of saw the predicted order finish, how important is it to get off to a good start and conference play Monday?
I think it's very important because you don't know what the future is going to hold. So you don't know how many of the games you're going to, because of COVID, you're not going to be able to play. So this opening weekend where everybody's healthy, when I say health, I'm talking about free of the virus, you need to win because you don't know what's going to happen down the road. Because the way our schedule is, there's not going to be very much room to make up games because of us, the way we play Saturday, Mondays. There's not going to be very much room for our teams to make up games. So the games that are on the schedule, you want to try to be able to play them as their schedule because the future is not promised with this COVID out there.
Charles, Alabama State at Mississippi Valley State. That's Monday, January 3rd. FAMU and Bethune-Cookman, rivals. They kick it off. On the women's side, Alabama saw Pine Bluff. That's going to be interesting, women's and men's basketball.
On the women's side, now you're going to see what Pine Bluff is made of because I think Alabama A&M, they have a pretty good team. She was missing some players, and I think she's gotten them back now. So we'll be able to find out this weekend whether or not Pine Bluff is for real.
Charles, Alcorn State at Jackson State, both women and men, Prairie View A&M and Grambling State, and Texas Southern at Southern. So Charles, on the women's side, Alcorn goes up against the preseason #1 team.
That's right. And so, by us not playing the last game against Texas, actually the last 2 games that were canceled, UNO at home, and that was a rare home game. We only had 3 home games, but they were quality home games, Southeast Louisiana, UNO. And those are teams that we could probably beat at home to give, like Coach Pettaway said, a little bit of confidence because you do want to taste a victory. I mean, I do get why we do play down when we get these home games because you do want to feel like what it is to win a game. You don't want to go 0-13 in conference. I get it. And so, that's another conversation, but you do want to taste victory. But we do open up against Jackson State on Monday. And Jackson State, I believe, has not played in a while. I think they loaded their schedule up with some tough games, but then they backed off later in December so they can get themselves ready for conference. So I think that that's another way of looking at it. And let's see if with Amisha Williams and company, let's see if it works out for them. And then Carlos, you talk about a quality schedule. I think Don Brown's team, they won the USM tournament early in non-conference. I thought that was a big boost for them in terms of confidence and morale. And I followed them throughout non-conference. I thought they played pretty well, lost some tough games, but hung in there. So I think if you can win a tournament like that, play tough against some decent competition, I think you still, as a coach, Coach Pettaway, would feel good about where your team is going into conference.
Right. They got to taste that victory. They got to know what it feels like. I think that's very important, and I've always believed in that.
Yeah.
Well, are you guys ready to? We saw what the SWAC predicted order of a finish on the women's side. Should we be very aware of University of Arkansas Pine Bluff? Either one of you guys ready to move them up in the preseason rankings?
Yeah, I think they've already shown that they're going to be a team to be reckoned with now. Yeah, they have certainly had some quality wins in the non-conference schedule. That's why I say tonight. I'm sorry, not tonight. When they play when they play against Alabama A&M, that'll be a good litmus test for them.
We often talk about winning the games at home and then, kind of split on the road. You think that will hold true again this season in spite of COVID?
Well, you better be trying to win. You better be trying to sweep on the road now because the future is not promised. So you got to go after every game. If that game is scheduled and you can play it, you got to win it because you don't know what's going to happen in the next week or the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, and what Coach Pettaway said about trying to get these games in. I mean, remember now, our games on Saturday and Mondays.
Right.
So if you've got games, and with the COVID protocols, you got to have at least one head coach and 7 players. If both teams don't have that, then you've got to find a way to get the game scheduled through the SWAC office. So you've got to figure out, you're going to play a game on a Wednesday. Our game with Jackson State, there's some discussion about that because Jackson State's men were in quarantine because they didn't play their last non-conference game the other day. We didn't play Minnesota. We're supposed to play them on Monday. So we don't know how that's going to go. Right now, the game is on, but, things have changed so quickly. So it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge, especially with this variant. It was predicted, it was expected that these things were going to happen. And the conference trying to get ahead of it as best as they can. I think they did a real good job in laying the parameters out in terms of what needs to happen. And I think it's up to us, me, coaches, ADs, to do their best to keep everybody safe so these games can be played, Carlos, because if they're not, we talked about in the last hour, money and revenue, that's revenue that's gone out the window if the games don't get played. So I think that, this is the second year we're dealing with this. It looks like we're at the same point as we were 12 months ago. And so I think we know what to do. We know what we need to do to make this happen. So let's see if we can make it happen. We'll see Monday how many of these games get played.
They got that
and I think when you look around the country, when you see at the major conferences the number of games that have been canceled or postponed because of the virus, now those programs theoretically they've got more resources to use for COVID. And if their players are still coming up with it, that it's gonna affect the SWAC. So that's why a game that's scheduled is so important now to win it, because you don't know when you're gonna get to the next one. And it may not be because of you, it could be because of your opponent.
And then another thing quickly, Carlos, Houston, Final Four team last year in the American Conference. The other day they were scheduled to play Cincinnati. They had cases in their program. The game has been forfeit to Cincinnati. And so you're talking about a Final Four team that lost to Alabama, that already has got a forfeiture on their schedule. Just think the mindset of a program like that in terms of losing games already and then losing a game due to COVID. How tough is that? Just for the psyche of the coaches and players in that program. I'm sure it's tough. And let's hope it doesn't happen that much in our conference. But I think if it does, it's going to mess with your head a little bit. No question about it.
Yeah, thus the times we're living in COVID-19. Now it's almost like, guys, when it first started, you're almost number-wise back to the beginning point. And in some cases, it's probably worse. But it's going to be an interesting situation this whole conference season. Last but not least, Coach Pettaway, on the men's side, and we look at, as you stated, Prairie View, no wins. Mississippi Valley State, no wins. Alcorn, 1 win. Alabama State. Grambling State, 3-10. Everybody else basically with 2 wins. And Southern 6-7. But I guess that doesn't mean a hill of beans if you don't get off to a good start in conference play. And Southern has it tough. Look, Prairie View, although no wins, Texas Southern 2, still a formidable opponents.
Right. This is going to be a big weekend, a big week, Monday and Wednesday for Southern. Southern could, by Wednesday night, Southern could have a stronghold on that first place if they can win their home games. Because I think they're playing the best basketball right now out of any teams in the league, even though, Texas Southern went down and beat Florida. They have not been as consistent as Southern has this year. So I'm really looking forward to those 2 games. That's going to tell a lot about the conference race, because if Southern can serve at home, it's going to put a lot of pressure on those other teams.
And Coach Johnny Jones, a native of Louisiana, I'm sure he's going to have his team ready to play. He coached in the city when he was at LSU. This is not his first time being back, but I'm sure he's low key, but he's going to have them ready. And then Coach Woods is the opposite. He's fiery to me. And Coach Woods, I told him the last time I talked to him, Man, I'm so scared he's going to get ran over by the officials or the players because he steps out on that court.
Yeah, he's
so into the game, man. He better watch himself. He's not 22 years old anymore.
Right. Well, he's got a real balanced team. He's got 4 people in double digits. He led in scoring by Lions with 14. But, to have that kind of balance, he almost has 5 people in double digits. So that means that they're distributing the basketball, they're spreading the wealth. So it's going to be tough for teams to just try to key in on one person because they've proven in the non-conference schedule that they all can put the ball in the ball in the basket. So it's going to be real interesting, and this might be one of his better teams. I just hope that the COVID and he stays injury free. I think we may see a good Southern team.
Yeah.
And Charles and Coach Pettaway, if I'm not mistaken, last year I don't believe Southern had anybody in the starting 5 that averaged double figures. Now,
they did.
So I think they got better talent. A couple of transfers in, one being from Lions from North Carolina A&T, but seeing them against Kentucky, Southern just has better talent.
Right.
Than last year. And so now the continuity and the chemistry is what they're building on.
Right. And Sadler's back playing well. So I think that's been a big key. Like I said, injuries and COVID, to me, that's the only thing that's going to slow them up.
It's going to be Prairie View, Texas Southern, still going to be tough opponents. Jackson State, all to me the most physical, along with Prairie View, physical teams in the conference. Man, it's like a football. I want to say it's a football mentality, and the basketball game breaks out. Jackson State is just physical. I mean,
right.
And then Bethune-Cookman got a chance to see them. I want to say North Carolina State. I saw them, Coach Theas, and then I saw Bethune-Cookman's women's basketball team against Alabama. Got some nice size, so it's going to be interesting. Hopefully injuries and COVID, if you can get through those 2 situations, it should be an exciting race.
Right. I'm looking forward to it. I think this is an exciting time of the year. We're coming to the close of football and the beginning of basketball conference play. I think it's going to be great in SWAC basketball. And I look forward to seeing all the teams. I just hate that I think the way the schedule has done us this time, Jackson State is coming to Huntsville on the same night that they're playing the national championship game. So that's going to be a toss-up.
Well, Coach Pettaway, that's a good point. I was going to ask you about that because I really got a chance to dive into our schedule the other day. And because of FAMU and Bethune coming in, there's a handful of teams you only see in one time. Like we go to Alabama next week, but they're not coming to us. We go to Grambling once. I think we go to Southern once. They don't come to us. The schedule's different. The travel partners are different for some teams. Yep. How is that? I mean, does that make any difference at all, or is who's on your schedule and you just go with it?
Well, it will make a difference because when you're playing a team twice, you can always say, I got a good chance to get you because you're coming to my place. And you got to come back to my place. But in this case, some of those teams won't see each other till the following year at their home. So it's a little bit different, but you just got to play. You got to play the schedule the way it is. You got to beat them at your place so that they'll have something on their mind when you got to go to theirs. So you got to play your best.
And Alcorn opens up, Carlos, with the first 3 games on the road. Jackson State, then I'll be in Huntsville next week, A&M next Saturday, and Bama State. That thing can swing either way. If Braves come out strong the first 3 road games and come home for our first home game of the season in a couple of weeks, I mean, the Braves could be off and running, and that's going to change the trajectory of the conference.
Right.
If they can get 2 out of the 3, that would be great. Don't go 0-3 in those first 3 games. Even if it's 1, you still, because it's early, but 2-1 would be outstanding to start out 3 on the road. George, you'll be in Baton Rouge July. Football next year, Alcorn comes back. Talked to some Alcorn Knights, and they were not happy about that. But I told them, Charles can explain it to you why Alcorn has to come back to Southern. So we'll explain that at another time. Coach Pettaway, we appreciate the time, man. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay, Carlos, I look forward to it. You guys stay safe and God bless.
Sir, will do. That was Coach Van Pettaway here on the Coles Brown Show. We're going to take a now. When we come back, visit with Brandon B.J. Jones of Inside HBCU Football, wrap up Black college football season. And I've got to get in, Charles, at least talk a little bit about Coach Dooley and assistants and 7 signees. Oh, was it 9? 9. We'll talk about that. We'll incorporate that with BJ. You're watching the Coles Brown Show on the Black College Sports Network. We'll be right back.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
Your ad could be ran here. MyJBN.com/support. MyJBN.com/support for more information.
Majesty is a premium health and wellness tea line focused on bringing delicious yet healthy tea blends to the community. Filled with an abundance of vitamins and antioxidants, we work to blend teas with exotic spices and fruits to produce scrumptious and wholesome beverages. So check us out at mymajesties.com. That's MyMajesties.com. My Majesties, an Urban Passport member.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
So we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com. For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, authentic Caribbean cuisines.
Open up the door, tell your mama hungry.
Follow the Black College Sports Network on social media at MyBCSN1, the number 1, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MyBCSN1.
Welcome back to this week's edition of Cole's Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. Makes you think about football season all over again, 2022. We are won by the human jukebox. I want to give a shout out to the folks in the chat rooms on YouTube and Facebook. Some great conversations. Like and share those pages to keep growing. The Carlos Brown Show and the Black College Sports Network. Inside HBCU football, BJ Jones joined me. Happy New Year, BJ, and good afternoon. I didn't say morning for once. BJ, you didn't. Carlos. Good afternoon. You didn't party too much, huh, last night?
Oh, man, I ain't doing no partying, man. You got Corona going on, man. I'm not leaving the house.
I understand. I had to ask. Even in the house, you have to, that's your safest bet. I know, like veterans like me and Charles, our partying days were done 20 years ago.
Mine never got off the ground. I wouldn't go with that line.
I tell you what, I could tell you a lot of stories, but hey, with age comes maturity. So you gotta be balanced, whatever you do. And speaking of balance, BJ, last time we had a show was December 18th. Celebration Bowl. We talked to you as right before kickoff. Get your thoughts on South Carolina State taking a 31-10 victory over Jackson State.
Hey man, South Carolina State, they came, they had a point to prove. And you talk to the players from South Carolina State, they said that they were tired of being disrespected. They were disrespected the whole week. Kobe Durant said, "Hey, me and him, a couple of teammates went to the mall, and someone in the mall said, 'Who is South Carolina State?' Oh, y'all that team that Jackson State's playing."
Really?
Yeah. So it was almost like the Celebration Bowl was supposed to be this big coronation of Jackson State, and South Carolina State was just simply there because Jackson State couldn't play themselves. They had to play somebody else, and they just so happened to be South Carolina State. And Durant and the guys have really talked about Buddy Pugh. Say, hey, our coach is the winningest coach in MEAC history. He's the winning active coach in HBCU football. He's going to go down in history as one of the greatest coaches in our sport, particularly when you talk about HBCU football. And no one was talking about him the week of the Celebration Bowl, and that got under those guys' skin a lot. And they wanted people to understand that the MEAC isn't going anywhere. There's been a lot of talk all year. The MEAC ain't this. The MEAC ain't that. So when you couple all those things and put it into that ball game, you had a South Carolina State team, and they said we played angry because we were. And Jackson State caught the brunt of that.
A 21-point loss, if I'm not mistaken, the largest in Celebration Bowl history. Who would have thought that? Over 48,000. Congratulations. Top crowd in the Celebration Bowl. MEAC has only lost one of these Celebration Bowls. They lead in the MEAC SWAC Challenge. Opinion is, I think the SWAC will catch up. But the fact is, the MEAC has done better in the SWAC MEAC Challenge and the Celebration Bowl, BJ. And defensively, I thought South Carolina State, they were physical, and they gave Shedeur Sanders some different looks. Sometimes you see him showing blitz. They drop 8 back in coverage, and 2 INTs by Sanders. And then offensively, Jackson State defensively, they come after you. It's no secret. They play a lot of press coverage, man-to-man. South Carolina State was able to go up top. And you remember in the first half, he missed some opportunities, South Carolina State quarterback. So overall, great game plan. They felt disrespected. I can see that. And it showed. They came out and they took care of business. 21 points. Wow.
And I think, South Carolina State, that program has gone through a lot. And it's something I want people to think about. South Carolina State for the last 2 or 3 seasons, if you look at their roster, about 98% of that roster is from the state of South Carolina. Reason being, because of the budget cuts, they haven't been able to recruit outside of the state. So that roster is primarily South Carolina kids. And also, when you look at this particular roster, once you go down the roster, and I want you to look at how many seniors are on this roster, I'll say you the time, 6 total. they are losing a grand total of 6 players off of this football team. The running back that you saw, freshman. Shaq Davis, sophomore. Quarterback, sophomore. Like it's literally, this team is literally riddled with redshirt freshmen and sophomores, and they're all from the state of South Carolina. And I say that to say that South Carolina State ain't going anywhere. They're going to retool and be right back in the position this upcoming season.
Coach Pugh Charles, you know what? A couple of years ago, we thought we were going to see the farewell tour for Coach Pugh. Great success, but then hey, he was able to turn it around. And I guess the question would be to both of you. Usually we see a Celebration Bowl win financially, it's better for the institution. You know, both, you know, getting more money in there. And I'm sure South Carolina State would take advantage of that. And hopefully they'll reap some rewards from this big victory.
Yeah, I mean, I think just what BJ talked about in terms of the disrespect, and we talked about in the last hour, Carlos, I think throughout the MEAC, when it comes to MEAC versus SWAC, and, you know, BJ's more in tune with the MEAC, I think, than I am. I think there's a little bit of disrespect to the MEAC, you know, when it comes to the SWAC MEAC Challenge Celebration Bowl. We always talk about the SWAC and what the SWAC has done and all of our SWAC teams, but we don't talk a lot about the MEAC. And I think that gets under those guys' skins from the other schools, whether it's Central, whether it's South Carolina State. And I think in the national stage of the SWAC MEAC Challenge and Celebration Bowl, the MEAC teams have a point to prove that, hey, don't forget about us. Like BJ said, we're not going anywhere. And so whether it's North Carolina Central, whether it's South Carolina State, whatever the case, they want to go out and prove that the MEAC is just as good as the SWAC. And that's what, you know, that's kind of what I want to ask BJ about. Do you think that chip on their shoulder when the SWAC MEAC Challenge or SWAC MEAC games roll around, is that a bigger factor than maybe people don't talk about?
It is. You know, living in Atlanta, run across a lot of guys from the MEAC. And they will always say, hey, man, when we talk about hypertension, the MEAC will never match the SWAC. I mean, you guys get the crowds, you guys get the attention. But when we put it on the field and between the lines, and they'll tell you we're better, we're better, and they say that, and they've been saying it, you know, for a while. If you go back to the SWAC MEAC battles, if you go all the way back to the mid '90s, the MEAC has an overall winning record by 2-1. It's a significant gap. It ain't you know, a few games here or there, and that really fires those teams and those schools and those alumni of those schools up, because all they hear is SWAC, 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 SWAC.
Yeah.
And then to me, the style of play, one word, physicality. If you mention the MEAC to me, they're very physical. We've seen physical teams from the SWAC that we said were physical, like Alcorn and Grambling, but A&T didn't lose in the Celebration Bowl. North Carolina Central, a very physical team. So they're very physical. And I thought South Carolina State, again, showed that in the Celebration Bowl.
Someone explained it the way this to me. It's like being in a boxing match. I know you're going to throw 3 punches. I'm going to hit hard 3 times. And that's usually the way that it works in SWAC football. What changes up when you start facing off against those MEAC teams, it's going to be a lot more than 3 punches coming. And you're thinking, okay, once the emotion run, you know, we get past the emotion, and then that's just going to, no, it doesn't stop. And if you haven't played against that, that's tough to overcome. Even with Jackson State, you saw South Carolina State getting physical with some guys from Jackson State on 2 Saturdays ago, and they were just not accustomed to it. If you look at how physical they were in the blocking, how physical they were in the tackling, there were some guys that honestly they hadn't experienced it all year. So it caught them by surprise. And being on the sideline, I'm gonna tell you this: by the third quarter, that game, the middle of the third quarter, that game was over. That game was over.
Interesting, to say the least. Well, it is what it is. The MEAC, once again, they triumphed against the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and hopefully it'll change soon. the next couple of years. There's always next year, BJ. BJ, Coach Dooley, now settled in, has his staff. And I was talking to social media, some Prairie View A&M supporters or alums, and they were like, wow, took all of Prairie View's staff. But when you look deep into those hires, they were at Prairie View, but they have Southern ties. They either played or coach. With,
the Southern
with
guys
Coach
coming
Dooley,
back home.
so a smart move. What was that, BJ?
Southern guys coming back home.
Yeah, I would agree. And so what do you think about the staff? I know one we were talking about before we came on, DeMarcus Miller. That was a shocker to me. Defensive line coach. Now he adds collegiate experience to his coaching pedigree.
And you're talking about a guy that played at Southern University, man, played on one of the greatest teams in Southern University history, that 99 championship team, and unblockable at the defensive tackle position. You said it right before we came on, man. If he were 2 to 3 inches taller, he would have been making a lot of money in the National Football League. Boo-boo, as we call him. Boo-boo, as we call him. But the man, DeMarcus Miller, man, what he's done on the field, and now he's going to have the ability to teach that to those defensive linemen, man, that speaks dividends. You got so many other guys coming back, whether it's Mark Frederick, you got Rock coming back, Coach Miller, coming back. I mean, it's the old gang. The old gang is back, and what's going to be interesting to see. Everyone's looking at recruiting right now, with what you see Jackson State doing, and you see what Alabama A&M doing in particular, and Grambling is doing. People a little bit antsy about recruiting, and what I'm telling people, hey, relax, man, relax. Sign a day into February, not into February, so just relax a little bit.
Yeah, and Coach Dooley says it could sign up to 17 more student athletes in February, but Henry Miller, I remember, secondary coach at Southern University, defensive coordinator. Alvin Fossman played at Southern University. Linebackers, Ryan Burton, he's going to be the safeties coach. Lee Allen Clark, defensive end, Grambling State.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Damon Nivens played at Southern University, coached at Southern University. Offensive line, Mark Frederick played at Southern, coached at Southern University, was at Prairie View, of course, coming over. Devin Fossman, originally signed with Mississippi State, finished his career at Jackson State. He's a receiver coach. Ricky Jackson, recruiting coordinator. And, of course, we talked about DeMarcus Miller. The only staff that was held over was Chris Brown. Tight ends is the only coach retained. But Coach Judah says Henry Miller is no stranger on the bluff. He brings a wealth of knowledge and experience in the SWAC. And matter of fact, the defense was, I think, 3rd overall in the conference at Prairie View. So you look at Southern University, they went into the JUCO ranks, 9 signees, I think 6 or 7 on the defensive side, BJ.
Yeah, that lets you know that, hey, defense wins championships. And that's something that Coach Dooley said in his press conference. That, hey, when I first became a head coach, man, I'm like, hey, offense, and I get these receivers, quarterbacks, man, I'm just going to simply outscore you. But his maturation as a head coach, let him know that, hey, that's not possible. You got to play all phases of the game. And you saw that with this particular group that he signed. I would not be shocked to see a few more defensive guys. Really see some guys on the outside. And everybody talks about the quarterback position, but, Coach Dooley, he's going to hit that offensive line hard as well.
You're absolutely right. One quarterback, Deshaun McCray, him and his brother, quarterback from Orlando, Florida, Hines Community College, threw for over 1,100 yards, 6 foot 180. His brother is Benny McCray, defensive back from Florida International, played last year. They also hit the JUCO ranks. Trey Lang, defensive lineman, Darren Mars from Southern Lab, Brian McNair, transfer portal from Ohio University. Kelby Gibbons, defensive line from Captain Shreve, 6'2", 230. They're going to be all right. He knows the stakes. Everybody can't coach at Southern because it's high pressure, but we can say that about every place. Alcorn State, Coach McNair, they didn't have a typical Alcorn season. I've noticed they've hit the JUCO route as well. JUCO compared to transfer portal. BJ, we'll wrap it up with that question. Do you think people forget about the JUCO when they're recruiting and they're putting more emphasis on the transfer portal? Why is it still important to go to the JUCO ranks?
I mean, you have a lot of those kids, man, that have the athletic ability for whatever reason. They ended up in the JUCO routes, man. A lot of it was academics. Some of them, kids just want to go that route to see, hey, can I get re-recruited and get a bigger shot? But I think right there in the state of Mississippi, you got one of the best junior college football systems in the country. We talk about Hines and Gulf Coast and Jones and Colin and those groups over there, East Mississippi, East Central. They play some quality junior college football over in the state of Mississippi. And you're going to get some quality athletes from those ranks. And I think what the portal does, it gives you some guys that kind of they got some print on the resume at this level. Especially guys who have playing experience and you can evaluate their film playing on the collegiate level, especially those guys who played on the FBS level. It gives you an opportunity, they got print on the resume. They got stuff that, to go about. Their track history is there. So I think you got to have balance in doing both.
I would agree. Well, BJ, Happy New Year to you. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. You have a show coming up tomorrow?
No.
Or this week coming up?
Yeah. No, we're going to kick it. Do a recap on next Sunday. Just recapping everything, but and we'll take this one off.
I understand. Well, we shall talk again real soon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
All right, man. Happy New Year to you guys, you and Charles, man. And I hope that 2022 is the best chapter yet for you guys.
Same to you.
Same to you, BJ. 2022, it's going to be good. Take it easy. Well, we've come to the end of the first show of 2022, the Carlos Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. Charles, closing comment?
Well, I want to echo what BJ said. I think as far as Alcorn recruiting, hitting the JUCO ranks, probably the best year they've had in a while in terms of hitting the JUCO ranks. And yes, we do have one of the best JUCO systems in the country. East Mississippi, Hines, up north or on the coast. I mean, there's talent all over the lot, and we definitely hit that hard. We'll hit the portal a little bit, and then we'll see what happens in February. I just want to make a comment about Coach. I think Coach Dooley's making all the right moves, getting the fan base, the Jaguar Nation excited about, the coaches that have Louisiana and or Southern ties. I think that's a good start to get people excited and comfortable with what Coach Dooley is doing, and I think that's the way to go. I mean, he's hitting the ground sprinting, not running. And that's a good thing because the West is wide open, and whoever takes that stranglehold on it could possibly win it right off the bat.
I want to thank Brian Fulford, Mr. Orange and Green himself, for producing today's show. Once again, make sure that you like and share this show and Black College Sports Network, and appreciate everybody in the chat room on Facebook and YouTube. I want to thank you, Charles, for coming on today. I guess we'll talk again next week. You'll be on the road. I guess you're glad to be home for a few days. You're always busy. Always busy.
I just want to say be safe, everybody, because especially traveling and flying, these airports are packed. These planes are packed. Wear your mask, socially distant. It's tough out there. Just stay safe so we can get back to some sense of normalcy.
Well said. Until next Saturday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time for the Carlos Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. Until that time, as always, peace, God bless, and Happy New Year.
Support the Black College Sports Network so we can continue to provide you coverage. Go to myjbn.com/support and be a part of the Black College Sports
Tell everybody
Network.
they can follow their dreams.